Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is episode 98. So we are pretty close to episode 100, where I will be revealing the rebrand of the podcast. We are still doing our giveaway between now and episode 100. So if you are interested in winning a free Starbucks gift card, a free personalized meditation, or a free 1-hour coaching session with me, you can enter to win in 2 different ways. One would be rating and reviewing the podcast and sending me a picture. 2 would be filling out our community survey, which is located in the show notes of this show, but also can be found in the bio of my Instagram. If you do one of those things, you'll be entered to win once, but if you do them both, you will be entered to win twice. So you have doubled the chances to win, and I really would love to hear from you from the community survey. We're really trying to use the survey to help make the show what you want it to be, to cover the topics that you're most interested in, to have guests on that you find really fascinating. So if you could help us out by letting us know what you're interested in, we would greatly appreciate it. Okay, now on to the show. This week I have on Bob Healey. Bob is a friend of mine, a fellow yogi. He's also a father, a businessman. He has run for office. He is a philanthropist. He is many, many things, but really what he is amongst all of those things is just a spectacular human. And we talked about his long and winding road toward the life that he lives now. Bob, as you'll hear in the episode, was in a punk rock band, and he woke up one morning in the back of a van like he typically did in those days, and suddenly realized that the path that he was currently on, which is something he thought he had wanted his entire life, was not going to get him to where he wanted to be. And he wasn't sure how he was going to get to where he wanted to be. And it required him to take a huge leap of faith in his life, but he did it. He took that leap of faith, even though he knew he was jumping into the unknown. And that unknown eventually led him to the path of yoga. And so we talk about that. We talk about his journey. And then we talk about a lot of the core principles of yogic philosophy and how he has used them to serve him in his life as a partner and a father, as a businessman, as a leader, as someone whose really deepest desire in this life is to serve. And it's really a fascinating conversation. We cover so many major facets of yoga philosophy and how we can integrate them into our everyday lives. It's a really long episode. I don't usually do episodes this long. And in fact, at the end, I mentioned that I might break it into 2. Ultimately, I decided not to. I didn't find a good stopping point in the episode where I felt like, oh, it's good to leave it there and then we'll come back. The conversation really, it weaves and it winds, but it always keeps coming back to the same core principles. And so I felt it was better to leave it just as one full episode. So take your time with this one. It might take you longer to get through this one, but I promise you it's worth it to listen to it all the way to the end. I will put all of Bob's information in the show notes, and he started his own podcast, which at the time did not have a name, but it is out and it is published now, and it is called the Offbeat Path Podcast. So I will link that in the show notes as well. Have a great listen, everyone. All right, Bob, welcome to the show. You are our second male guest on Mom on the Verge here. So
should I read anything into that?
No, I don't think so. My first one was a breath work master. And I said the same thing to him. I said, you're my first male guest. It was not intentional. I'm very intuitive with this podcast. I really just go towards the people that call me. And so here you go, as an expert on Mom on the Verge.
Well, if I'm in the company of a breathwork master, I guess I'm in pretty good company then.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. So just to our audience, Bob is someone I met actually through my local yoga studio. He actually came, and I think I met you prior to this, but you also did come and do a teaching of the Bhagavad Gita during my yoga teacher training. You also hosted some kirtan sessions that I attended. But I haven't seen you a lot lately at the studio because you've been very busy in your life and you just had a second baby. But I've seen you on Instagram. And on Instagram, I saw you doing something that I'm really passionate about, which is taking this really kind of complex yogic philosophy and making it easy to consume and very applicable to people's everyday life. And that is really what called me to get in touch with you to be on this show, because I am super passionate about doing that. And so I want people to know about you and know where to find you and, get the wisdom that you're sharing, because it's really beautiful and so helpful to people. So I guess my question to you would be, why did you decide to do that? Right. So, because you are, a lot of times what I have on this show are therapists, coaches, yoga teachers, people in that kind of world. That's what they're doing for their 9 to 5, right? Their everyday job. But that's not what you do. So maybe you could talk to the audience a little about who you are, what you do, and then what inspired you to start taking this journey of sharing this wisdom with people.
We've got an hour, right? I'll condense.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. Well, first off, thank you for letting me hang out. Because you and I don't get to see each other so much anymore because, two children changes your life in a lot of ways. In particular, like just not having time at all. Like if I could have one superpower before I had kids, it probably would have been, I don't know, something cool. Be invisible, super strong, super fast. Now I would just like the ability to create like 2.5 more hours in a day. If I had that superpower, my day would be great.
I totally agree with you. If you figure that out, share the secret.
I'll let you know. I think it's in a yogic text somewhere. There's a yogic city somewhere. I don't teach for a day job. I like to teach. I enjoy teaching. I try to do it as much as I can. I only have one public class anymore, and usually I just do workshops and teacher trainings, mostly because I can make my own schedule, and I can pick the stuff that I know I can do, and then say no to the things that I know I just can't do. So I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up very close to, I think, are you a Jersey native?
I am. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. South Jersey native.
Yes.
So no, you have no sports teams. So we co-opt the teams from across the river into Philadelphia. Because North Jersey, where there are sports teams, is a different country.
It is. My husband's from North Jersey. And when I went up there, when I started dating him, I was like, what is this? This is not, how is this the same state? I did. And he's actually a foreigner because he's from Spain, but he resided in North Jersey.
There we go. Actually, I love North Jersey, but so I grew up in South Jersey, and I grew up on a horse farm. My father had a business. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and my father's a pretty successful guy. And so I did the thing that you do when you grow up in the suburbs and your parents are loving and nurturing, which is you rebel against all of that stuff immediately and as quickly as humanly possible. So I remember my cousin gave me a tape which had Black Sabbath. I was about 10 years old, maybe. It had Black Sabbath on one side and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones on the other. And that was it. Like I could see my life and my future for the rest of my life. Like this is what I was going to do. I didn't know what this music was about, but I knew that I was going to be involved in it. And I started a band when I was in high school, and I kept playing in that band. And I went to college, in Philadelphia. And the interesting thing about Philadelphia, if you were in the punk scene at the time when I was, if you were from South Jersey, it was sort of like you had leprosy. Nobody wanted to book you when you went to Philadelphia.
That's true.
So I had this agreement with my parents where, look, go to college, don't get into trouble, don't do drugs, get decent grades, and we'll sort of leave you alone. Like you want to do this band thing, that's fine. This is the deal. And so, I'd always been pretty decent in school. I never did drugs. It just didn't interest me. And so I sort of kept up my end of the deal, and I started booking shows in and around Philadelphia, and I would put my band on them because nobody would book us. So I just booked shows for us. And by the time I got out of college, we had signed to a record label. And we had been touring a little bit here and there, but when I got out of college, we like, I think I graduated in May, and 2 weeks later we got in a van and we toured the US. And so we toured for about 3.5 years, 9 months out of the year, and that was what I did for a job. And as far as I was concerned at 21, 22, that was it. That was my future. This was it. Like, there's nothing beyond that. And I remember I was sleeping in our van in like outside of San Francisco. It was a beautiful spring morning, maybe even the summer, but it was not unlike today where it's just really nice out. It was unusually nice. And I remember waking up in the van and sort of pushing my leather jacket off of me, and nobody else was in the van, and immediately having this thought. It was the weirdest thought ever. It was, I want to have kids, and I want a loving relationship, maybe marriage, with the person that I have children with. Mm-hmm. And then very quickly on the heels of that realization, because that was so far from my life, like that was so far from anything I was thinking about. Like the motto in punk rock is like, live fast, die young. It's like, I'm not going to make it to 30. So what do I care about the future? Yeah. And right on the heels of that realization, I had another one, which was, okay, if that's what I really want out of life, this is not conducive to that. So it took me another year to grapple with it. It's just, I love people. I love hearing stories of people who have realizations and then immediately change their life. I have a transcendentally thick skull, so it takes a lot longer. It's like, that's what I really want, but I'm going to keep doing the thing that I don't want, because that's what I know how to do. And in yoga, we call that, the conditioning of the material mind. That's your mind has some conditioning. I'm conditioned to do this thing. This is who I am. I built my identity up around being in this band, being this lead singer, being this, being successful, whatever that looked like for us, which was paying our rent. Basically, we were able to pay our rent, which is more than a lot of people could do. And you don't let go of that stuff easily. Yeah. It's hard to let go of that stuff. It's hard to let go of an identity that you've built up. There's a lot of fear that surrounds it. There's a lot of fear that surrounds letting go. There's a lot of fear that surrounds the unknown. Like, okay, well, what does that look like after? So it took about another year. And then one day we were home from tour. We had band practice. Our record had been released and it was doing really well. It had sold out in stores back when they sold. Do they sell records in stores anymore? I don't know.
Actually, don't know.
No,
That's a great question.
But anyway, this is for any of your listeners that are like under the age of, I guess, 30, like they had these things called CDs. They were laser discs. You used to have to keep them on the sun visor of your car, and they would fall out at inopportune times and get scratched. And then you would put them into a little thing in your car and pray to God that they didn't skip. Anyway, so our record had been selling really well, and it had sold out in a lot of stores, and we were getting more popular. And I didn't think about this at all. I just walked into practice, and on my way down the steps, I got to the bottom and I looked at my band members who I had spent more time with in the last 4 years than my own family members. Yeah. And I just said, I'm out. And they said, what do you mean you're out? I said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And they were like, wait, what do you mean you don't want to do this anymore? I said, look, I don't bear you guys any ill will. It's nothing against you. You can have the name. You can have all the money in the bank account. You can have everything. I can't do this anymore. Mm. And so I got out of that and I went and did the one thing that I had promised myself most of my short adult life at that point that I wouldn't do, which is I went back and I worked for the family business, ostensibly because I needed to pay rent. Like I had this job and I just quit my job. And I'd also sort of handed all the money in the bank account that we had collected to my band members, which I was okay with. And I went back and I figured I can't get fired from this job. It's my family. They're not going to fire me. So I'll do this for 6 months, and then I'll figure out what I really want to do. I have a college degree. So I was wrong. You can get fired when you work at a family business. As a matter of fact, you get fired more often than people who aren't actually related to the people that own that business. I realized as I was working in that business a couple of things. One, that I had some pretty unhealthy habits in my life. You live on the road, you sort of eat whatever you can eat. I had always sort of been a gym rat, even in high school, but I wasn't the healthiest gym rat. I
Mm.
sort of just went when I could. And I got into all natural bodybuilding. And I really did it because, um, and this is like the Western mind, right? I need to change my life. So let me find someone that looks the way I want to look, and then I'll figure out what they did and I'll do that.
Yeah.
And so I went and, I saw all these people in bodybuilding who had these at the time what I was like, oh, that's healthy. That's got to be healthy, right? They've got to be healthy. They're look at how muscular they are. They must be
Yeah.
healthy. And so I went and found a trainer and did what I could, and I dropped a bunch of weight, and I, certainly got stronger, and I competed for a little bit, and I found it totally unfulfilling.
Mm.
And I also found out that I couldn't touch my toes, like bend over and touch my toes, and to put my socks on, I had to roll onto the bed because my hamstrings were so tight. So I started dating this person who would become my wife. And I found we were living together in South Jersey, and I found this yoga studio. And when you're bodybuilding, and I was doing all natural, I wasn't taking any kind of drugs or steroids or testosterone or any of that stuff. I really just did it to try to get healthier.
Mhm.
You spend like 2 hours, and you can spend 2 hours in the gym, and then you do cardio. And so like when it came to stretching, I didn't want to do that. It was another
Right.
15 minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, isn't this funny? I do all this stuff that I don't like to get to a place that I think I am going to like, because I've been conditioned to think that that is the place that I want to be at. And so I didn't want to stretch. I knew I needed to stretch. So I took a yoga class. I took a hot yoga class. Um, and when I got there, I took two private lessons. My girlfriend, now my wife, bought them for me. She bought me two private lessons, and I thought, okay, the guy here is named Ed. This is the guy on like the little email I get. Your private lesson was with Ed. I'm like, okay, Ed. Well, Ed is probably like 100 pound sopping wet granola eating guy with thick black rimmed glasses, who probably smells like patchouli, has a crystal in his pocket, and maybe a little soul patch or a scraggly goatee. I'm like, this is Ed. This has got to be Ed. So I walk into the studio. It's like 6 o'clock and after work, and I get in, and there is this guy in board shorts with a little bit of a pudge, pot belly,
Yeah.
goatee, no hair. He's got to be like 55, and he's got these meaty hands, and he shakes my hand. He goes, "Hey, I'm Ed." And I'm like, "Yes, you are." And so he starts working me through, and we have a couple, and I take a couple more privates with him, because
Yeah.
this is funny, right? I took privates because I wanted to be good when I went to a public class. I wanted to
Mm.
be good at yoga when I went
Mhm.
and demonstrated in front of everybody else. It's a show. Everything's a show. This is how I'm
Mm.
conditioned in my life. I'm conditioned to go on stage,
Right.
sing in front of people, and and be a personality. And so I've got to
Yeah.
do that in yoga too. I have to do that in everything in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I took these private lessons, and probably the third or fourth private lesson, I said to Ed, you are not what I envisioned when I thought about a yoga instructor. And he said, well, what do I said, you don't look like a yoga instructor. He said, well, what do I look like? I said, you look like a union construction worker. You've got, because he had some like crappy tattoos that were sort of like, old, and,
Yeah.
and sort of had been damaged by the sun. Maybe they were great
Yeah.
tattoos, but they've been,
Yeah.
and he goes, that's because I am a union construction worker. So Ed's story is that
Mhm.
Ed was on a jackhammer for like 20 plus years, screwed up his back. His
Mm.
wife got into yoga. His wife kept saying, you should come to yoga. It'll really help your back. And he's like, I'm not doing that foo-foo yoga crap. Like, I work
Mhm.
and I come home, and that's what I do.
Mhm.
And so he went to yoga one day. He took a yoga class, physical asana class, and
Mhm.
his back started to feel better. So he got really into it.
Mhm.
And eventually, years on, he and his wife now own the studio, and
Oh my
they
gosh.
teach people, and he's a yoga teacher now, and that's what he does
Yeah.
for a living. And that was the first time I really learned what faith looked like.
Mhm.
which has sort of become really important in my life. We have blind faith. We have this thing in particularly in our Western culture where we don't like blind faith, right? It's a put down, blind faith. If you have blind faith, that's really bad. But we have blind doubt about everything. I had blind doubt about yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga
Mm-hmm.
yoga is just stretching. It's for people who look a certain way, do a certain thing, and it's not for me. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
And Ed had the same attitude. But then he went and he tried something and he got some benefit from it. And so he tried something else in the same vein and he got a little more benefit. And
Mm-hmm.
slowly, through all that experience, he started to trust the thing that he was doing. And faith, I have a great teacher who always says, faith is trust by experience. That's what real
Mm-hmm.
faith is, reasonable faith.
Yeah.
So in yoga, what we want is we want reasonable faith and reasonable doubt. I don't want blind faith, but I also don't want blind doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I got into yoga and I saw these people doing arm balances and handstands. And so I thought, well, I'm really strong. I would go to this public class, people would do those things. I'm like, well, I'm really strong. I'm a bodybuilder. I can do these. I can do arm
Yeah.
balances and handstands. And then I couldn't because it's a whole different set of
Yeah.
muscles and engagement and your mind's got to be a little quiet. And so then it was a contest again, right? Like, all right, well, now I have something to compete with. So I
Yeah.
chased learning how to do arm balances, handstands, and a lot of really cool looking yoga poses that you would probably put on Instagram. And that got me into following people that did that kind of stuff. And that's what I really worked towards for the first couple of years of my yoga practice. In addition to the fact that I started to realize that I got this hour every day where nobody could call me on my phone. Nobody could
Mm-hmm.
bother me, where I could be alone with my breath. I started to breathe better. My body felt better. Um, and eventually that led me to really wonder, okay, well, the first thing it made me wonder was, okay, well, maybe I'm into this yoga thing now, and I've got some reasonable faith. I'm seeing some benefit from it. So now maybe I'm missing something in my practice. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
Western way of thinking again, right? Like the
Yeah.
conditioned mind, like, okay, if I'm not getting the pose I want, I must be missing something. What am I missing? Well, there's all these people that do meditation. I'm not a big meditator. Let me try meditation. Maybe my mind's not quiet enough to do a handstand, right? So I get into meditation. No, that's not doing it. I'm still not getting my handstand. Let me try. Um, let me look into um, some of this philosophy stuff. And so I decided I was going to take a yoga teacher training at the studio that you and I kind of
Mm-hmm.
both go to a little bit. And I took this 200-hour training thinking I want to learn handstands and arm balances. That's what I'm here for. I'm not interested in chakras. I'm not interested in any of this mental stuff. I'm not a
Yeah.
touchy-feely person.
Yeah.
And so I went and I took this teacher training. And during the teacher training, there was an exercise they did. I don't know if they did this in yours, where they said they wrote a bunch of emotions down on a piece of paper and they put numbers on the floor. And when they called out the emotions, everybody would walk to the different numbers. So 0 being, I don't have this emotion at all, to 10, like I feel this emotion intensely. Stuff like
Yeah.
fear, happiness. So one of them was joy. And when everybody got to the space that they were supposed to be at when they called out joy, I was at 0. And everybody,
Mm-hmm.
oh, come on, Bob. Like, you're not really 0. Nobody's at 0 joy in their life. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm married at this point. I have no kids. And I said, no, I'm serious. This is where I'm at. Like, what? That's not possible. I said, look, it's not that I've never been happy. It's not that I have a wife. I love her dearly, but like joy, this intense feeling of joy. I've
Mm-hmm.
never felt this in my life, at least in my adult memory. And, and I sort of had this realization, like, this may be a problem. This is,
Mm.
this may not be a good thing because I grew up in the punk scene. You're supposed to be tough, at least at the
Yeah.
time. Like, you're supposed to be tough. You're lead singer of a punk band, you're a tough guy. I lift. I'm a tough person. So like, I don't need joy. Who needs joy in their life? Like, I got other
Yeah.
stuff. I have other qualities. I don't. But I sort of realized, okay, maybe maybe I should think about this a little more.
Ah.
And so I started to seek out teachers that talked more about yoga philosophy, and in particular, this one philosophy called Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of, they say, joy or love and devotion. And I didn't know a lot about it. I was really fortunate to have a person I used to go to high school with, who owned a studio in Philadelphia, who knew a lot about it. And I started taking some classes there. And I started to think, okay, well, if I like this person, who taught that person, and who taught that person, and who taught, and so I started to go seek out these teachers that taught this way, teachers who represented, not who not only talked about this stuff but practiced what they talked about.
Right.
Very easy. I mean, just turn on like politics, or turn on Netflix, and look at a actor, and you can, or go on a million interviews with people, and you can hear a lot of people talk about certain things who don't actually practice that in their own life. And look, we're all on our own journey, and we're all working to be better people. At least I believe we all are in some way or another. We should be. So it's not a put down. It's just that I wanted to meet people who practice the things that they talked about in their own life. Because you know this from teaching yoga, like, yoga teachers that go in and talk about being healthy and treating your body right, and then are at the bar at like 2 a.m. throwing back drinks. And it's like, I think there's a disconnect here. Yeah. Again, we're all struggling. We're all doing what we can do. But like, so that led me to India. And that led me to an ashram in India, where I spent a lot of time around some really interesting teachers, one of whom, and I wasn't a joiner. I wasn't like, I'm not joining anything. I'm not getting into this. I'm just exploring it. I am a card carrying skeptic. That's the way I've been raised. I've been, I've been rebellious all my life. I don't conform. Meanwhile, I was in, punk rock, where everybody wore the same type of jeans, or had one of the same 30 band shirts, or like your haircut's either a mohawk or Liberty spikes or a shaved head. Like, so maybe I was kidding myself. Maybe I really was a conformist. We're all conformists. We're all conforming to something.
We are. Yes. Yes.
And I had this great teacher, and I said to him, I've been here for 6 weeks. And at this point, I was in my early 30s, and I had some success in my life, some business success, some material success. My father was getting older. I was taking over the company along with my cousin. And I said to him, this teacher, I've been around these monks for 6 weeks, and they got nothing. They don't own anything. And they're really happy. And I've suddenly realized they have something I want, and I don't know how to get it. And I said to him, like, I want that, but I don't have it. What am I doing wrong? And so he said, he said, do you believe in God? Now, I was raised Catholic, and to me, God was always an authority figure. He was there when you screwed up. And I said to him, yeah, I believe in God, but God is, but I believe in him. Like, I'm not an atheist, but we don't get along so well. He typically dumps on me, kicks me when I'm down. I believe in him, but we don't talk. Somebody should do a study, by the way, between somebody's relationship with a higher power and their relationship with their father or mother, because that was like my relationship with my father too. Like, I believe in him, but he's a hard guy. We don't talk that much. And he said, okay. Then he said, do you like yourself? And that was like a gut punch. And I paused it felt like 20 minutes. It was probably 5 seconds. I really thought about it. And I said, I don't think that I do. He said, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try being somebody that God wants to get to know? Now, this is a Hindu, monk. This is not some preacher in a church or wherever, because just given my cultural proclivities, it may not have taken, right? So it's time, place, and circumstance when people have these moments in their life.
Yes.
I could have heard this message from people who are eminently qualified in a different set of clothes, in a different space, and it probably wouldn't have taken. But for whatever reason, I was in a headspace. I was around people. I had some reasonable faith with these people who I had been spending time with, that it finally penetrated my skull, and it changed the entire way I looked at life. And I realized, yeah, you know what? I probably need to work on myself a lot. Like I had spent a lot of my life thinking everyone else is the problem. You know, I am the center of the universe. Everybody revolves around me. Um, and the reality is, when I really looked at the way I treated people, when I really looked at the way I interacted with people, people who I barely knew, people who I loved dearly, um, there was a lot of work that I probably needed to do. And so I got really into bhakti yoga, and I really got into this idea, the philosophy of yoga. And I was really fortunate to have teachers who were able to take what could seem like very esoteric sort of philosophies from things like the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Yoga Sutras, and really boil them down to this is what it looks like in your everyday life. And over the last, I would say, gosh, I'm 41 now, so 7, 8 years. I don't know how long it's been, maybe a little less. Um, it's really had a profound effect on my life. It's had a profound effect on who I am as a husband, who I am once I had kids, who I am as a parent, how I interact with the people I work with, just how I try to find joy in life, the things that I value. And in yoga, they have this concept called parampara. So yoga, I don't know if you know this, but yoga is one of the only things where you can plagiarize the hell out of everything you've learned. Like you can take what somebody said and use it as long as you give them some credit.
Yeah.
Because here's the interesting thing about the philosophy of yoga. I didn't make this up. I didn't make it up. And the teacher I have didn't make it up either. They got it from somebody who got it from somebody who got it. And it goes on and on and on and on. And that's called, you know, in some circles, it's called disciplic succession. In some personal circles, it's called parampara. But it's this idea that it's handed down.
Yeah.
And so nobody owns it. It was given to me freely. And so if I'm trying to give it away to other people freely, I'm trying to give people what was given to me. And I just started doing that through talking about it, you know, giving classes at yoga studios, um, and then, you know, posting on Instagram. And most of the stuff that I post, I don't know how profound it is, but it's mostly just top 10 things I learned about being in business while from studying yoga philosophy. You know, top 10 things I learned about being a better parent because of studying yoga philosophy. Because ultimately, we all live in a world that pulls our mind in so many places. And this stuff has to be useful and effective if it's going to really resonate with people. And if it's not useful and if it's not effective, then what are we really doing? You know, my life is short. Everybody's life is short. I'm just trying to be a better person every day. And I want to find the things that are going to get me there. And I want to try to move away from the things that aren't going to get me there.
Yeah. I love your story. And I love so I'm reading a book right now. An author's coming on, and I'm reading her book before she's coming on, but she calls them the God dots and the whispers. And I throughout your story, I'm just like seeing the God dots and hearing the whispers, like as you're telling this story. I mean, the fact that you like wake up in this van at 20 something years old after thinking you're going to commit your life to this one path that you decided was your path, and out of nowhere get this download or realization is pretty, I think, pretty powerful, because it's really what started you on the rest of this journey, right? Your decision to say, no, I want something different out of my life and I need to make this change, then led to so many other things that brought you to where you are today. And with each one of those things, you were kind of just following what I call the path of fascination, which actually that's not mine, it's Martha Beck, but I use it over and over, the path of fascination. Like, well, I'm curious about this, so I'm going to try this thing. And that's where you talk about faith. Like, I'm curious about this, I'm going to try this thing. And then maybe after I get some benefit from it, I'll actually have faith in it that it works. And now I'm curious about this next thing, and I'm going to try this next thing. And now I'm curious about this next thing, and always just kind of following that internal curiosity, which is part of our like guidance system, to bring you to this beautiful place in your life. I think it's a very cool for us to be able now, where you sit, to be able to kind of see that entire journey up into where you are now?
Well, nobody, I remember at 20, I couldn't see past like 25, you know, and I remember thinking 30 is really old. 30, oh my God, 30 is old. Like when I'm 30, I'm going to be, and then I turned 30 and I'm like, man, 40 is really old. Now I'm 41 and I'm like, 50 is not that old. 50 is just, it's not that old. It's not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
And through that whole, and there's sort of a metaphor there, or not a metaphor, but it's a prime example of what in yoga we would call having a conditioned mind. And what that means is I'm born into this world, and from the very moment I come out of the womb, I'm bombarded with all sorts of input, you know, from a little child all the way until the day I die. And my mind starts to get conditioned, right? I have these experiences in my life and they start to color the way I see the world. Mm-hmm. I meet certain people, I meet a certain type of person, they treat me a certain way. My mind says every person that's like that person treats me that way. I mean, we see this with people. Yeah. And this is what the mind tends to do. What to speak of conditioning I might have from lifetimes ago. If you, you know, if you buy into reincarnation, if you don't, that's fine too. But ultimately, just in this life, I've got some conditioning. And the beautiful thing I found about the yoga practice is that it doesn't tell you, learn how to do a handstand and it'll solve all your problems. Yeah. Go to this teacher, read this book, it's going to solve all your problems. Mm-hmm. The beautiful thing about yoga philosophy, Vedic philosophy, is what it really says is you're already happy. You know, in yoga philosophy, we say that you're eternal. The very default nature of the soul is that you're eternal. I've got some knowledge, right? Like my soul can't be born, it can't die. It's eternal. Yeah. I've got some knowledge. I've got some inner wisdom. That's not the same as following the little voice in your head. I hear that a lot, you know, with students, like, oh yeah, I listen to the guru within. It's like, well, that's funny because my guru within tells me at 11 o'clock at night that I need Ben and Jerry's. So yeah. I'm not so sure. I trust my guru within. All right. That little voice inside. Yeah. What it means is somewhere deep down, I'm situated in truth. I understand the truth that I'm eternal and that the default nature of the soul is to give and receive love, is to be happy, is to be full of joy. Mm-hmm. That's the default nature of the soul. And what yoga philosophy says is you've already got all that. Mm-hmm. You're born with it. The whole work in this world is to start to remove some of those roadblocks that keep you from realizing that. Yeah. That's how those monks who had nothing were so happy. I mean, if somebody listening to me doubts all of that, listen, I've been to ashrams. I've seen monks with nothing. Really intelligent people, by the way. It's not like a cult. These are really intelligent people with PhDs who choose to give up everything and lead a very simple life. And they're extremely happy. And so what yoga philosophy says is you've got all that. We just got to remove some of the roadblocks. And I think that's really beautiful because it means it's accessible. Yeah. It means that anybody can benefit from this.
Mm-hmm. And what I also love about yoga is that I do really feel like it gives you the tools. Like, so they tell you that it's possible, and then they outline specific steps. Now, it's a weaving, winding journey. It's not a straight line. We're always practicing, but they give you some things, guidelines, right? Like the yamas and niyamas, or, you know, meditation where we go within and try to quiet the mind, or, you know, different texts that we can refer to when we're struggling, when we're like, I can't seem to get past this, like everything that's in my head. I can't seem to quiet the noise. It gives you somewhere to go to look for that information. And it's been translated. Like, I found many beautiful books that I can understand, like, unlike the Bible. So when I grew up, it was the Bible. I grew up in a Catholic household. I remember trying to read the Bible and I was like, I do not know what you're saying. And I went to church and I would feel the same way. I would feel like I don't really feel like this resonates with me in my life. And again, when you go deep into Christian religions, they're really saying all the same thing as other religions and as the yoga philosophy. But at least for me, it is presented in a way that it really resonates deeply for me and that I can really use it in my life. And it doesn't feel punitive in any way. It feels very loving and open and accepting, which I guess is another part of what drew me to it.
Well, I have a teacher that says that no, faith has cornered the market on truth, right? Truth is truth. There are various ways that you get there. And look, truth's not subjective either. It's objective. And so one of the beautiful things that I often think about, particularly in bhakti yoga, but is that, what does Jesus Christ teach in the Bible? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Somebody asked him, what's the greatest commandment out of all the commandments? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love God with all your mind, soul, and your heart. Fix your mind on God. What do the Yoga Sutras talk about? Fix your mind on Ishvara. Fix your mind on God. Fix your mind on the divine. This stuff is not so different. I often think that it has to do with, I think back to that one teacher that I had at that ashram. He wasn't telling me anything that I hadn't already heard. I grew up Catholic. I'd been to church. I'd listened to hundreds of sermons. I just didn't actually internalize it until I heard it from that person in that circumstance. And people find that in all different ways. I think what becomes really important is to remember that the way that I came to find a relationship with a higher power is not going to be the same for the person next to me, or maybe even my children, my wife, people I know. It's just not.
Yeah.
And you got to keep the main thing the main thing. It's something else that one of my teachers often says. What you want to be focused on is, I want this relation in bhakti yoga. We want this relationship with the divine. That's what I want. And what's going to get me there? How can I change my life and spiritualize my life? Doesn't mean that I got to cut stuff off. It doesn't mean that I got to get rid of a bunch of stuff. And you see this, people who get into something new, they start cutting off all their friends, right? Like, I'm going to get rid of all my friends. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to, how can I cut everything out of my life and focus on this one thing? That's not necessarily healthy either. Yeah. You want to be able to live it in the life that you've got. I want to be able to spiritualize the things that I do. You enjoy music? I enjoy music. Kirtan, so, work on music that's a little more devotional. If you're into food, offer your food up to the divine before you eat. If you're really into service, like working for nonprofits, so go serve somebody selflessly. I recently had this thing happen. You and I talked about it before, where my wife went through some medical issues. We had 2 young kids at home, and I sort of took off from work for a couple of weeks, and all I did was fold laundry, clean up the house. Like a great day for me was when all the laundry was done, the kids were put to bed, the house was picked up, it was 8:30, and I was exhausted. And all I could think of was, how does somebody do this day in and day out? Which is my wife, and she is, I married up, way up. And although I was like tired every day, I was really fulfilled because I was doing service for people that I loved. I was taking myself out of the center. In the culture that we live in, we tend to think that we inhabit our own Netflix show. Like, this is my Netflix show. This is the Bob Show. There are a lot of other characters in the Bob Show. It's been going on for 41 seasons. Some people, my wife, she's signed a multi-year contract in my show. Sometimes there's even shows where I'm not present. It's the ensemble cast, but they're all talking about me. That's what I've conditioned my mind. That's what my mind is conditioned to think. The reality is, it's not my show. I'm actually pretty insignificant, but I have value, right? And what that allows you to do when you start to realize that is, it gives you perspective on life. Somebody doesn't like me, somebody has a bad opinion of me. You know what? That's all right. I'm not the center of the universe. It's all right.
Mhm.
You know, um, how often do you ever do this? You walk up to a group of people and they're talking and they all look at you and you're like, oh, they're all talking about me. That's the conditioning of the mind right there. That
Mhm.
snap minute. That's the condition. They're all talking about me. They're probably not. Probably talking about anything but me. The weather,
Mhm.
what was on, the last Star Wars episode that was on last night, whatever it is. They're not talking about me, but that's where the mind goes. And so the process of yoga is to uncondition the mind to that kind of self-centered thinking. I want to be selfless. I want to be humble. And that doesn't mean that I think less of myself. It means that I think of myself less.
Mhm. Yeah. So how does that show up? Like, how does all of this show up? So we just talked about the fact that, you were on this journey and you have brought it into your life as a business owner, as a parent, as a partner. Like, how do you see this showing up and helping you in your everyday life? Can you give examples?
Sure. Um, Anybody who's has kids will know that you get reminded almost on a daily basis that you don't own them. They may be your children, but you don't own them, and you certainly don't control them. I have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-month-old right now, and
Mm.
before in business, you know, particularly if you're running your business or if you're in a position of high management, I would often think, well, everything in this business is here to support me because I'm the decision maker. I'm the one who makes the decisions. Every person under me is there to support me so I can make the best decision possible. That's actually not the case. The reality is, if I'm doing it right, I'm trying to build really good teams that operate without me there because I can't be everywhere at all times. I'm going to miss something. I'm a flawed individual. And if everything rests on my decisions alone at all times, we're going to have a lot of problems because I make mistakes all the time. But when I get a group of people together and they build teams and those teams go out and enact whatever strategy or whatever vision we've got is, now all of a sudden I have the benefit of all these other people with a lot of other knowledge around me. And I found that that's where I've gotten the most joy out of being in business is watching when other people who I work with achieve, not when I achieve, but when
Mhm.
they have some great success. And I know that maybe I came in and pulled out a little roadblock here, made an adjustment there, but ultimately the success is theirs. I was just there. I was in the pit crew. If they're going around the track, I'm just the guy that put the tire on and maybe tightened a couple of bolts and they won the race. And that is a better feeling I found than any time I've actually got a success on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes back to this concept of what is love um, in yoga philosophy. In a lot of these yogic texts, they say that when you love somebody, the object of their love, their happiness becomes your happiness. And so if you're really working on seeing every person not as black or white or a Italian American or a male, or if you're trying to see the soul underneath it, doesn't mean those things don't exist and they don't affect the material world and there's not things that happen because of that. But if you're really trying to see everybody as a spirit soul, if you're trying to get under all of that, you want to try to love them. It's a weird concept trying to say, like, I want to love my employees. Like people at business conference would be like, what, you feeling all right? Love your employees? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And what that means is when they have successes, if you're doing it right, you feel that high with them. You feel that joy.
Right.
When they've got successes in their personal life and in their professional life, when
Mhm.
they've succeeded professionally, and then, I bought this new house. I've been working so hard for all these years. I got these raises. And I bought this new house in where I always wanted. And now my kids are going to a great school. And it's like, yes,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So, I've seen that in business where I've learned that I'm not the center. When I actually realize that I orbit around other people and my job is to be of service to them, I get more enjoyment out of my work.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I, I mean, I ran for public office, um, high office. And that puts you in a really odd spot because basically, at least the way that it works these days, you're meant to be critical. Like that's your job. You got to be critical because it's a zero-sum game. There's a winner and there's a loser. And so you got to do everything you can to destroy the other person. And the reality is, you watch a lot of people who get really attached to being in public office. They work their entire lives, some people, to be in that office. Whether it's dog catcher or congressman or senator or governor or town council person, like whatever it is, you meet people who and they work their entire life to get there, and they get so attached, and they twist their life to get to that one goal. Sometimes the worst thing that happens is they get it, and they're miserable. I lost, and they say that what's that? Somebody just said this to me the other day, but I'd heard it before. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's not mine, but
yes, I've heard that as
definitely gonna
well,
use
and
it.
it's so true.
And I remember, I remember thinking about it the other day. I've gotten to see my kids grow up. I wouldn't be home if I had won.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I wouldn't do it again. It just means that I got to look at the positives in my life. Oftentimes you're conditioned when you're doing that kind of thing to hate the other person, hate the other side, put your jersey on and go to war. And the reality is, just because I think differently than somebody, just because we may disagree on fundamentally everything when it comes to politics or life, it doesn't mean that I have to hate you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, and it's not done so much anymore, you've got to be able to understand where that person's coming from if you want to have a real debate about issues. You almost have to be able to argue the other side, and that requires understanding. Here's the beautiful thing about finding understanding with people. It leads to compassion. When I understand someone, I can put myself in their shoes. I may not agree with their shoes. They may not fit me very well. I may not like their style. I may not like their color. They may never have been shoes that I would buy, but I can sit in them and I can look down, and then I can start to have compassion for that person.
Yeah.
And that keeps you from falling into hate. It's very hard to hate somebody you've got some compassion for. And I found that over the last few years has really influenced the way that I've interacted with people and ideas. Because the minute there's an idea that tells me I ought to hate somebody or some certain type of people, that's a problem. One of my teachers says, like, that's a red flag. Any kind of philosophy, political ideology that tells me I have to hate somebody or a group of people, it's a red flag. There's a problem there. So, I mean, and being a parent, I mean, Jesus, being a parent is like the biggest test of yogic principles in the world. Being unattached, loving something so much and understanding that you only have so much control over it. And that eventually my daughters are going to grow up to be their own people. I can influence them. I can try to show, and I can influence them by the way that I act and the way that they see me interact with people. But one day they're going to leave my house and they're going to grow up and they're going to have a whole other set of experiences that I will have no control over. And how do you get unattached? How do you get unattached from that? How do you love somebody but be unattached? It's super hard. I haven't figured it out, but if anybody else has, please send me an email. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's extremely hard. It's one of the hardest principles for me, that the non-attachment, particularly to really only with actually things that I care about deeply. Outside of that, I'm very unattached.
Yeah. It's easy. If I don't like it, like whatever, I'm not attached to it. But I knew a person who I ran with, who ran in another state, and wonderful person, beautiful family, had his own business, lived in a really great part of the state, great relationship with his wife, and he had been working his whole life to get to this public office. He was attached for it his whole adult life. That was it. And he lost. And we still keep up with one another. Like even today, and I'll call him, check in, and he's still like broken over it. And and I've told him this. I've said, listen, man, you've got to look at your family. You've got these 4 beautiful kids. You're a great dad. They love you. I've met them. You know, you have this business that you built that's still doing really well. Like, come on. Like, just, but this is what happens to attachment. This is what attachment does to us. Attachment keeps us from seeing all of the positives in our life.
Yeah.
Right? I get attached to something. My mind focuses on it. I shut everything else out.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you can miss a lot of the really good things going on in and around your life. It's like signing a contract with misery when I get attached to something, particularly something that's not so healthy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also shuts down not only your ability to see the positives in your life, but also to see the possibilities in your life.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about someone like him with such an extensive history and experience, he could use that in so many different ways if he was open to the possibilities of it and releasing attachment. You know, the word that 2 words always come to mind for releasing attachment to me, and they're very hard words for me personally, are faith and surrender. And they are, do I need to keep coming back to those over and over and over again? Because if I just think about it, I would say, yes, I have faith and I know how to surrender because I have faith, so I can surrender. But then I find myself, I catch myself holding on too tight, wanting something to be a certain way, working overdrive to make something happen. And there's nothing wrong with wanting something to be a certain way, and there's nothing wrong with working towards a goal, but it's the energetic through which you do it with, right? It's the desperation versus the to me, one has a very clamped down tight feeling, and the other one has a very like open feeling. Like I surrender to the possibilities of what will be. I'm going to go out and do my part. I'm going to go and do what I feel I should and need to do. But then I'm going to allow faith to come in and let the situation be what it is. And those things can be really, really hard. When my daughter even was going through very significant mental health challenges, I had to have faith and surrender. Like I had no other choice. It was either I was going to have faith, do what I needed to do, and then have faith and surrender, or I was not going to make it through and I was going to be of no service to her whatsoever. And so I keep getting this lesson over and over and over, this faith and surrender lesson, faith and surrender. Have I learned it, Bob? No, I have not.
Yeah, well, let me know if you do, because I work on the same thing. I mean, we're not so hardwired to surrender as human beings. Like we're just not. We're conditioned not to surrender. Surrender is a bad thing. Being dependent is a bad thing. I mean, the reality is I'm dependent. I'm dependent on everybody around me.
Yes.
I didn't get anywhere on my own. I didn't come into this world on my own. And this idea of surrender, I think, is really tough, particularly if you live and come from a Western culture. Surrender in Sanskrit has a bunch of different meanings, the word for surrender, but one of them means to take shelter, which I always found a lot easier to wrap my head around, because look, if I'm surrendering to it, they say, surrender to a teacher. I'm not going to surrender to a teacher. What the hell are you talking about? That's crazy talk. You're in a cult. What about taking shelter of a teacher or a parent? Yeah. Be obedient, surrender to your parents. Like, no.
Yeah. Right.
No.
Right.
What about taking shelter of your parents? Because ultimately, when we surrender, that's what we're doing. We're saying, look, I don't have the answers to this one. I don't know how to proceed here. So I'm going to take shelter of somebody else. I'm going to take advice from somebody else. I'm going to ask for help. In the Bhagavad Gita, the main character, Arjuna, who's this prince, he's got to fight a war, and his best friend is a guy named Krishna, who also happens to be the divine. Spoiler alert. And Yudhisthira struggles with this thing, this exact problem. Listen, I've got these things I have to do in my life, these duties. It's called dharma, which I know you know that word very well.
Yes.
I've got all these different dharmas, these different duties in my life. You know, I'm a prince. I have to defend the kingdom, so I have to fight a war. I have to rule well. I'm responsible for people. And how do I sort through them all? Because sometimes my responsibilities get in the way of one another. And what am I supposed to do? Just surrender and hope it all works out? Like, are you kidding me? I'm responsible for people. I can't do that. And in the Gita, Yudhisthira, or rather Arjuna, gets told, look, imagine yourself like an instrument. So just for a minute, imagine that, you do your work, you do what's required of you, you do your duty, but you leave the result up to the divine, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the Western world, sometimes that's really hard. I'm not leaving my result up to some imaginary being in the sky. Okay, well, look, try this. Just try it as an experiment. Do everything that's required of you. If you are an investment banker, be the best investment banker that you can. If you're a janitor, be the best janitor that you can. Do your job really well. Don't worry so much about what the result is.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson often said that he's often quoted as saying something to the effect of, I'm going to mess the quote up now. It's something like, I have a lot of I believe in luck and hard work. And the more I have of the latter, the more I get of the former, right? And so do your job as best as you can and leave the result out of it. Yeah. Get unattached from the result. And that's one of the ways I've been able to, parent and not go insane. Yeah. It's like, listen, I'm gonna, in the way that I do that in my own life, I'm there for every morning when my kids wake up, and I try to be there every night when they go to bed. I'm the one who reads them a story. That's like my thing. I'm gone in the middle of the day. I work. Yeah. I travel. But every day that I can, I try to do that. When I travel, I think about, okay, I'm going to be gone for 3 nights. There's going to be a time when my kids aren't going to want me to put them to bed. So I have a finite amount of time. I don't know how much, but I know it's finite. Is this trip or these days, is what I'm going to go do worth that? And I benchmark everything against that. And so do I think that, do I hope that they're going to turn out really well because I'm the one that they see in the morning and at night, and I try to be there for them? Yeah, I hope so. But I'm not holding on to that. I'm just doing what I can do, hoping it has some effect, but trying not to get attached to the person that they will be 18 years from now.
Yeah. And it is really hard in parenting to consistently allow them to just be who they are. Because as parents, we have certain preferences, right? We have certain ideas and preferences about life and about what's right and wrong and good and bad and all the things that we've been conditioned. And our kids can really blow that up. They can really come in and just like,
I mean, you gotta have some guardrails, right? Like you gotta have some guardrails, like anything else in life. Like, if I'm on a spiritual path, I want guardrails on my spiritual path. If I'm with my kids, I want to give them some guardrails.
Yep.
But I don't want to drive the car for them.
Right. And it's simple things like, so for example, my son, my husband and I, we joke all the time. We're like, if our kids didn't look like us, we sometimes wonder if we brought the right children home, because we're both like super athletic, outdoor, like backpackers, played sports forever, still play sports. My husband's a 2nd-degree black belt. Like we are physical people, right? Outdoor, rugged, physical people. And I have tried to foster that love of those things in both of my children, who are like hard pass, okay? Hard. And they do not like it. I still force them to go on hikes and they complain every time and all this stuff. And my son loves video games, right? What boy doesn't love video games? Young boy loving video games. But his is kind of next level. It's like where he feels really confident, where I can tell he feels like a master. He feels a sense of pride. And I don't, of course, want him playing tons of video games because there's lots of evidence about the importance of kids being outside
Yeah.
and, digging in the dirt and being creative and, all of these things that I am very familiar with because I live in that world, right? But I also am looking at my son, who I can clearly see that this is very deeply part of who he is and who he was meant to be. Like he will end up, I would assume, we'll see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised, let's put it that way, if he ends up somewhere in that arena of either electronics, video games, computers, something like that. It's a natural born talent. He can, at a very young age, could do stuff that I still can't do. It's a love of his. It is a passion. Okay, let's put it that way. It is a passion of his. Now, do I put guardrails on it? Yes, I do. Are you allowed to sit on a screen all day long? Absolutely not. Get out of the house, be in the sunshine, go swimming, ride your bike, do the things. But if you were to have asked me before I kind of took this journey, I would have been much harsher on him about the screens and about the screen time and about how much he loves screens. But having a little bit of space, I can say, I see you, right? I see you. I don't just see my perception of you. I don't just see what I want you to be. I see who you are. And I have to parent from that place of who you are versus who I would not prefer you to be, but nobody wants their kid on a screen all the time. So would I love it if you were super athletic and wanted to go backpacking with me? Sure, I would love that. That would be a great experience that we could share together. But I fully allow you to be who you are and say, this is who you are and I accept you who you are. And that is a journey in parenting that I can tell you I've had to do over and over and over again. That's just one minor example. As your kids get older and they start showing really who they are and strong preferences for certain things, I think we all experience parents who are like, no, like you can't do that, or that's not right, or that's not good. And then you start internalizing that some part of you is bad. And to me, the yogic journey for me has allowed me to see the soul, as you were talking about, like to see the light underneath it all, and like let a lot of that stuff drop away. A lot of those expectations drop away. So I don't know if you've had that experience, but and even when you were talking about like, I love seeing my employees succeed. Well, that's similar to your kids, right? If your kids are involved, right, let's say in a sport, or they're really great at chess or whatever, they're great at. They play an instrument beautifully. You get so excited for them, so excited to watch them do it, so excited if their team wins or they win a tournament or they win a chess game or whatever the case may be. You're so excited because you love them so much. But to be able to transfer that over to other people, to be able to see the God in them, to see the divine in them, and to be so excited for their success, like you were talking about, is to me one of the beautiful parts of this journey, because it allows, it at least has helped me tremendously to see the soul underneath the human. And to know that we really all want the same things, even if we're not, politically aligned, or we don't really, like you said, like agree on anything, right? We just don't agree on anything. We all want the same thing. We all want love. We all want safety. We all want to fit in and belong. We all want love. We all want all of these things. We might be going at them at very different ways of getting them. But we all want the same thing underneath. And most people are just trying to get at those things.
Well, the soul is meant to love, but I've got conditioning. Some people have a lot of conditioning. Some people, have a lot of experiences in their life that cause there to be difficulties for that. And so I've often thought that having kids has really helped me to see beyond, maybe some superficial appearances of people, or the way that their attitude, particularly people I maybe don't like so much, because I try to remember, okay, that person was my 3-year-old at one point. That person was my 1.5-month-old at one point. No matter how damaged somebody is, no matter how much somebody's gone through in their life, at some point they were a little child. It doesn't excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean, that, having radical love or having the ability to try to see everybody as a soul doesn't mean that you spiritually bypass or people get a pass for
Correct.
doing bad things.
Yeah.
Some people might have to be punished. Some people might have to go to jail.
Yeah.
It doesn't excuse any of that, but it keeps you from falling into that trap of hate.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you from falling into that trap of, um, judgment.
Yep.
Um, and I don't mean judgment, superficially for material stuff. I mean judgment on the level of, that person's an irredeemably bad person. Their soul is totally black and they're never coming back from it. It's like, that's not what Vedic philosophy and my own life experience has taught me. And so having kids has really helped me to try and see the good in everybody that I meet.
Yeah.
One trick that, a teacher once taught me, he said, if you really want to get out of being that sort of judgmental, self-centered type of person, start just appreciating people and letting them know about it. So not just like seeing somebody and thinking, oh, you know what, person's got a really, that person's really, really smart or really kind, but telling them about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really powerful in that when you share that with somebody, because most of the day we just go through life. I mean, most of the day I go through life. Maybe it's just me. I'm from, I'm like an Irish Italian kid from South Jersey. So, there might be some conditioning there, but most of the day I go through life thinking like, everybody's out to get me or thinks like I'm a piece of crap. I remember being in India in an airport one time, and I landed. I was going on a pilgrimage with a bunch of people, but it was me and another person who had landed. And this person has fiery red hair. She's very pretty, super sweet person, but she stands out in a crowd. Like she does not, particularly in India, she does not look like everyone else, red hair. And this guy in this like purple suit, like velvet suit, is in the baggage claim area. And he starts like kind of circling around us, eyeing us both up. And so my conditioning kicks in. I'm like, okay, he's looking at my friend. And this guy's probably, what's he doing? He's trying to look to kidnap her. He's going to peel her away from me. He looks like some pimp. You know what I mean? Like, his velvet gold watch. I'm like, all right, this is where my mind goes. My friend is going to get kidnapped. At some point, I'm going to have to break this guy's face. This is what I'm getting ready to do. I'm like, and so then the guy, as he's circling, he's getting closer. Like as he circles, the circles get smaller and smaller. I'm like, this is it. I'm coming to India to go on a pilgrimage, to unplug, to work on myself. And the way I'm going to start this out is I'm going to break this guy's nose. All right, here it goes. And he gets right up, like to the side of us, and he stops. And I look right at him and I give him this look of like, try it, buddy. Just try it. The dirty Harry look, or at least that's what I imagined. I looked like it. Probably looked very foolish. And he says, oh, I thought your friend was so-and-so. I was like, who? Oh, it's this very famous, apparently I looked them up later. They're this very famous person in Europe who I've never heard of, but they're huge in India and they've got red hair, red curly hair.
Okay.
Thought it was her. She is so pretty. Have a wonderful day. He just walked away. And I'm like, and I remember thinking, I am so damaged. I have 10 years of yoga. This is where we're at. This is how far I've come. This is how much I've gotten over my conditioning. And so I try to be a little kind with myself because for all of this stuff that I study and I work on, conditioning in the mind's really hard.
It is. It is.
But I back to what you were saying earlier. I think that the more that we can try to see the good in others, and we can let them know it. Like, because that situation immediately changed. Oh, I thought this was someone else. You're very beautiful. It's like, oh my God, what a sweet person this is.
Yeah.
I immediately went from my mind racing and ready to, hurt somebody to, oh, what a lovely human being you are.
Yeah.
Like that's the power of seeing good qualities in others and telling them about it.
Yeah.
Um,
And also not
I'm lucky to
as,
have a teacher that has talked about that a lot.
yeah. Yeah. And I think we all make so many assumptions. Just on probably an example that everybody can relate to. I have this conversation with my husband all the time because he has a little bit of a road rage problem. And he always feels like, if someone does something in traffic, he feels like it's at a personal assault to him. And I keep trying to say, they are not against you. Like that had nothing to do with you, right? Either they were looking at their phone maybe and they weren't paying attention, or they thought they had more room to cross in front of you, but they didn't, or they're just having a terrible day. Who knows? I don't know what the story is, but I know it is not a directed assault on you personally, right? And this is something I think happens
They're
a
all
lot.
out to get me.
Yes, they're all out to get, and I've said that to them, like, why do you think everyone is out to get you?
You're only paranoid
about you.
You're only paranoid if it's not true. If they're all out to get you, you're not paranoid.
That's right. So this shows up, in so many ways. We tell these stories to ourselves about what is happening based on our history, right? Our experiences, our thought processes, not actually based on reality at all. And then that influences our behaviors, and it influences how we show up in life. And it can have really, can have side effects that we wouldn't prefer, for sure.
There's a definition of yoga I once heard. One of my teachers uses a lot, a guy named Kastuba Das. And he says, yoga is a process for overcoming the mind for the purpose of the self to realize its own true nature. Mm-hmm. So yoga is a process to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self to recognize its own true nature. It's this idea that my mind's actually an obstacle, right? Because here's the thing. Am I my mind? Deep down, am I what my thoughts? If I am, I got to tell you, I'm a pretty horrible human being because I got a lot of negative thoughts. Yoga says, no, you're a soul. The soul has, some is situated in truth, and it's made to give and receive love, and it's eternal. My mind's not eternal. My mind changes. At least mine does. Apparently, some other people, their mind never changes, but mine does, right? My body's not eternal. My body changes. When I was 20, I didn't have knee pain. Now I have knee pain. Like, there's a change for you. So my body changes. So these things that we get so attached to, these stories that we create in our mind, what Vedic and yoga philosophy says is, well, that's not actually the truth. Yeah. There's a really great book, yogic text called the Ishopanishad, and in it, they talk about the whole issue with the mind. My mind is my senses, which is the inputs into my mind, are imperfect, right? Because there's sounds my dog can hear that I can't hear. It doesn't mean those sounds don't exist. It just means that I'm not equipped to hear them. My dog is. There's colors I can see that my dog can't. Doesn't mean that, if a dog can't see, I don't know, somebody will email your podcast after and tell you that I'm wrong. But if a dog can't see pink, for instance, try explaining pink to a dog. You're never going to explain pink to a dog. It's never seen it. So my senses are imperfect. And because my senses are imperfect, I make some mistakes in life, right? Like, I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And because my worldview is an amalgam of all of my experiences in life, and I've made mistakes, I've probably got a flawed worldview. Like, it's probably not perfect. It's probably not pegged to exactly what the truth of every matter is. And so therefore, I tend to cheat myself. What does it mean by cheat myself? I cheat myself out of experiences I might have otherwise had, people I might have otherwise gotten to know. And you can see this in all over the place. My worldview, we were talking about it earlier in the podcast, my worldview tells me through experiences that a certain type of people are bad people. And so I never want to be around them, and I never want to have any association with them. And your worldview is actually like two people out of a community that you've met, right? But that's my experience.
Yeah.
And so what yoga allows you to do is almost like second guess your mind. Like, wait a minute. Wait. Calm down, start to breathe. Is that really true? Or is that just what I'm telling myself? And these are tough conversations, because I don't know about anybody else. I don't like to be proven wrong. As far as I'm concerned, I'm right until proven otherwise.
You and my husband would get along really well.
Yeah. I don't like to be proven wrong. My mind doesn't like to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
And so those are difficult conversations to have. But to what you said, yoga philosophy, Vedic philosophy gives you a framework and a set of tools to have those conversations and dig a little deeper and start to get through that obstacle that the mind can become, to realize who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. I mean, it is the only place that I have found personally, and I'm sure there are many other ways, but personally, that have given me those tools that have allowed me to create the space. And I think we talked about this in our last call that we didn't record, but the Viktor Frankl, that space between, the
Stimulus and
experience
response.
and the response. Exactly. It has really trained my mind to create that space on most occasions. And also to be able to question, to be able to say, is that thought really true? Am I, we talked about non-attachment. We also have to be unattached to our worldview, right? We have not just to the things we want in life, but our like what we would say, I know this to be true, right? A lot of us could say, I know this is true. But really, we need to be unattached to what we think we know is true, because what do we really know? Right.
I mean, in Bhakti, you're not looking to get unattached to everything. What you're looking to do is spiritualize your attachments. So if the highest purpose of my soul is to find some sort of connection with the divine, God, Allah, Yahweh, the flying spaghetti monster, whatever your conception of divinity is, it's fine. If my highest purpose is to find that connection, then I want to get attached to things in my life that further that. Right. So, if loving my kids helps me to have compassion for other people, then yeah, that's an okay attachment. But there are certain attachments I get that I think are good for me at the time, and then ultimately end up not being so great for me in the long run. And as life changes, and as I change my consciousness, those attachments change. Like I used to love going out to the bar. I did. I liked staying out late. At 41, I now know that nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at night. Nothing good. I didn't say nothing interesting. I said nothing good. But I used to enjoy that. I don't anymore. And why? Because, I wake up not 100% the next day. I've been out late. I'm tired. Maybe I'm hungover. It's not so healthy for me. And I really want to be healthy. Why? Because I've got kids. I want to be around for them as long as I can. I've got stuff I want to do in this life. And so those attachments can change as we change our life. And I'm just really blessed to have really good people around me who, bring me higher in life instead of, bringing me down. Because those, it's not just what am I attached to. In yoga, it's what are all my inputs? What am I watching on TV? What am I listening to? Who are the people that I'm hanging out with? All of that affects my consciousness. And if my consciousness is going a million miles a minute, I'm never going to be able to have those conversations that you and I just talked about that say, wait a minute, like, hold on. Is that really true? Is that really true? Or is that just is that just something I want to be true? Or is that based on a false confirmation bias? that's why meditation, I tell a lot of my students when I teach yoga, when I teach physical yoga classes, you know, asana, yoga asana, the physical yoga, there's it's it is yoga. There's a reason for it. It's because I'm stuck in my body. It's the thing I've got, the physical thing I've got the most experience with. So I want to take care of my body. Why do I want to take care of my body? Because I want to work on breathing. Why do I care about breathing well? Well, if I breathe really well, if I learn to take deep, full breaths, particularly under stress, right? If I'm holding a posture that's really difficult and I can breathe really fully, I can start to quiet my mind. Right? Just count backwards from 10 when you're angry, and you can see what kind of effect the breath has on the mind. Well, why do I care about that? Well, because most of the time when I make poor decisions in life, it's when I'm under stress and I make quick judgments. And so if I can learn under stress to breathe and slow everything down,
Yep.
I'll make better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I have you in down dog for 10 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Because in stressful postures, the body is under stress, the breath slows, and I learned that I can slow down my mind. If I can do it in down dog, if I can do it in an arm balance or a handstand, I might have a better shot at doing it when I'm sitting in a room with my boss or my significant other, and they're yelling at me, or we're in an argument, or they do something I don't like, or somebody flips me off when I'm driving. Not that you would or your husband would ever have experience with that. Like, I can slow down and say, all right, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter. It's going to be okay. Or what is this? Or in the case of a conversation, what is this person actually saying? What's actually, not what do I think they're saying? Not what are the words I'm putting into their mouth? What are the words coming out of their mouth?
Yes.
How can I actually effectively hear and listen?
Yes.
And you only do that if you learn to breathe and you learn to slow your mind down.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And even just, not even just what are they saying, but what do they actually mean, right? Because
What's
when
their body language?
right. And are they in a state where they're not really expressing themselves in their best way?
Have I caught them on their worst day, and am I about to judge them for the worst day of their life rather than on the best day of their life?
Yeah. I think for me, and I don't know, maybe you would disagree with this, but for yoga for me, because it has allowed me to see everyone as a soul walking around in a body, like you said, people do things wrong. They need to be corrected. They may need to be punished. They may need to go to jail, right? We're not excusing behaviors. But because I can see this soul, which is basically love, walking around in this body, I assume that you want the best for everyone and everything. I don't assume anyone is bad, right? I don't walk into any situation assuming that someone is bad. May they make the wrong choice? May they say the wrong thing? May they, get angry? May they, yes, all the above, right? All the things. We all know that people don't always behave in the way that they should behave. Yours truly included, right? Not excluding myself. But I'm going to come to every interaction with the assumption that you are a soul based in love, made from God, and that you are good. You are innately good, even though you may make poor choices. And then I can have enough distance to be like, okay, how do we find the good in this person? How do we pivot this situation for the better, right? How do we make this situation better by not assuming that this is just a jerk, right? This guy's just an asshole, right? He's just an asshole who's out to get me and doesn't care about anybody else, right? That I have found is not helpful in any way. But if I can take a deep breath, I can allow myself to see that person's soul, and then I can say, okay, next step. What do we need to do to move forward? That's the benefit I feel like it has really given me.
Albert Einstein once said, used to ask people a question when he met them. He asked some famous scientist this question. He said, do you believe that you live in a benevolent or a malevolent universe? And people would answer him. One scientist, might have been Oppenheimer. I don't know which scientist. maybe I'm just thinking Oppenheimer because that movie just came out, but some famous scientist that he said that to said, "What does it matter?" And Einstein said, "What do you mean, what does it matter? Your answer to that question tells me everything about your worldview." It's this idea in yoga, everything happens for my benefit. It might be very difficult to see, might be very hard, but everything is happening for my benefit. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn something. And if I learn enough, maybe I don't have to come back, or maybe I end up dying and going to heaven, or whatever your faith tells you, right? But I'm here to learn something. I'm here to learn many somethings. And so if you want to look around the world and think that it's out to get you, it's not going to be very helpful. One, whether it's true or not, like, it's not a very helpful way to go through life. It's not very useful. But more importantly than that, you miss the lessons that you're supposed to learn here. And that's a hard thing to deal with when you're going through some sort of tragedy or trauma or stress in your life. And my wife almost died in childbirth. And I remember sitting in the other room holding our daughter, our newborn daughter, while doctors are trying to save her, and thinking, God, what are you trying? Okay, I believe that everything happens to teach me something, but I can't figure out what the hell this is trying to teach me. Like in the moment, right? With some perspective, maybe I can. But right now, at that moment, it's like, what are you trying to teach me here? What benefit is there to having a 3-year-old without a mother and a newborn who's never known their mother, and the person I love most in the world? Like, where's the benefit here? What am I trying to learn? When I said yoga provides you with some perspective, at the end of it all, no, luckily she's fine, she's healthy, I've got healthy kids. What I learned is, when I was sitting in that room and my wife was, dying on a table, all the money that I might have in my bank account, all the what little success I may have had in my life, what connections I may have made, all the things that I thought were really valuable, really important in life. It's not that they're not important or valuable in some respect, but you start to learn the things that are, in fact, really valuable in life. And it's not any of those, because you want to know what? The thing that's really valuable to me, not the thing, the person that's really valuable to me is the person that's on that table. And none of those things can do anything about the situation I'm in right now. And if I had more of them, it wouldn't make one damn bit of difference. And so it allows you, when you have what a Vedic or yogic framework does for you, is it allows you to look at a situation like that, and rather than devolving into the world's out to get me, this is a tragedy, bad things always happen to me, which is, it's easy to do and people fall into it, and I'm not knocking that. I mean, it's those situations are tough. What it allows you to do is say, all right, if I try to zoom out a little bit, what do I take away from this? What can I take away from this that's to my benefit? In that instance, it was, you know what, I got to get really straight on what my priorities in life are. I got to get really straight on that. My family, my health, my business, and by that I mean the people I work with, and then my service, and in that order, by the way. And so what a yogic framework allows you to do is extract the positive out of something like that, and extract the lessons, and give you some guardrails for when you get to the point of, I'm just going to death spiral into depression and anger,
resentment.
Resentment. It sort of gives you those guardrails to go, no. You're smart enough to know what's going on here. Take a breath, zoom out. And I've been really fortunate. I've been really lucky. Because I wasn't that way in my 20s. That was the person I was. Like, the world's out to get me. Everybody's got a set against me. It's everybody's fault but my own. That's a good one too. Like, everyone else is to blame except me. I haven't done anything wrong, but everybody else has done something wrong around me. And the reality is that's me-centered thinking.
Yeah.
Everybody else is wrong. I don't do anything wrong. That's me-centered thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like we said, humility can lead you to some perspective. And if you don't have humility, pretty hard to have perspective. No
Yeah.
perspective can lead to some really dark places.
Yeah. But then that brings you to the light, right? So and
Brings me to
eventually
hard
will
work.
yes, it
It
will.
brings me to hard
100%.
work,
Yes.
and it brings me to a place where I know that the light at the end of the tunnel is in fact not a train.
Yes. Yes, yes. All right. I want to ask you two questions before we finish up.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you mentioned that you're in your yoga teacher training. They had these numbers on the floor. They had you, go stand on your number for different things. When it came to joy, you went to 0.
Right.
So I guess my question would be, I have two questions out of that, I guess. What was the first time that you can remember after that you experienced joy, and what were you doing? And how do you experience joy now?
It was the first time I experienced joy.
Was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is joy?
I can think of two. The first time was I was, so remember I said I tried a lot of things to get a good handstand practice.
Yeah.
So I got into meditation, which I still do, but I have difficulty meditating because my mind's all over the place. So I meditate with beads because then I can control my, it engages my senses, like my touch. And
Yep.
but I got into meditation and I was sitting quietly and I was trying to think. I don't know if I've ever told anyone this. I was trying to think I was thinking about that joy. The reason why meditation is always so hard for me is they're like, think of nothing, empty your mind. And my mind is like, squirrel, 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 movie, squirrel, dog, cat. That's it. So I had settled on, okay, I can't think of nothing. Let me at least try to work through something. I don't experience joy. When's the last time I can think of something that's given me joy? And I thought about my wedding day. And I was in this big church, the Church of the Jesu out in Philadelphia. Well, I went to high school at St. Joe's Prep, so it's the church that's on there. It's a really beautiful church modeled after a church in Rome, and it's got these checkerboard floors and this really ornate woodwork. It's gorgeous. And it was a June day. It was June 7th. And the doors open, and my wife comes in her wedding dress, and she walks down the aisle. And everybody is sitting in the pews. All of my friends, people I care about, people that I know love me because they wouldn't be there if they didn't, and people who I love. And I remember smiling like so hard that it hurt. And so that was a real feeling of joy. Here's the funny part about that. I didn't realize that until years later when I was sitting in meditation. At that moment, I didn't realize what that was.
Oh
this is the interesting thing this is why quieting the mind is helpful. I was thinking about a million other things then. So I didn't realize that I had this wonderful moment of joy. It just passed me right by. So that's the first time. How do I get it now? I try to remember that feeling. I try to not forget it when I have it again. Try to catalog that and do more things that bring me to that feeling. I'll give you a perfect example. When my wife was sort of down and out after what we went through, I took my daughter to gymnastics, my 3-year-old. And usually that happens at 9, 10 in the morning. I'm at work, so I don't usually get to go. So I took her this one time. And it's 3-year-old gymnastics. So it's nobody's doing, ridiculous flips over parallel bars. But they're running around. She's having fun. And the parents in her class, she's in another more advanced class now, but in the class that I was at, you went in with her. And so you ran around with her and you did activities with her. And for 45 minutes, I smiled so hard it hurt. And I remember thinking at the end of this, and this is the difference between the guy I was at 31 and the guy I am at 41. I remember thinking, okay, remember this. Take a minute, breathe, remember this feeling, remember what you're doing, remember the look on your face, don't forget it, and try and because this is what matters. Start removing all the roadblocks in your life that keep you from feeling like this. Yeah. And so now, every Tuesday this morning at 9 o'clock, I get out of the gym. I go right from the gym at 9 to my daughter's class, and I sit and I watch her in gymnastics. And, sometimes it's only 30 minutes because I maybe have to take a 9:30 call. Sometimes it's the full hour, but I get as much time in there as I can because that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. I love that. And what you're really making me think of is when you did that, that class with her and you're running around and you're, smiling from ear to ear, you're like fully present in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Just fully
Yeah.
in that moment. All of your senses, your mind, your body was right there in
Yeah.
that moment.
No phone, no thinking about what I got to do for work. None of that. It's just
Yeah.
me and her, and she's so happy, and I love her so much that her happiness is
Yeah.
my happiness.
Yes, yes. And finding more ways to do exactly that in whatever way it shows up in your life.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And people can, learn a lot from that and learn a lot about paying attention to it. Like you said, like that you missed that moment of joy. Like you somehow registered it because it came back to you,
Yeah.
but you didn't really fully absorb it in the moment because you were so scattered and all over the place. So that's a really big lesson, right? That's a really big, like a glaring difference, that first experience that you can remember to this next experience. So that's amazing. That's amazing. That's beautiful from the work that you've done, a beautiful gift from the work. And then my next question is, because, I'm so interested in Dharma, and I really do believe that we all were kind of like given certain gifts and talents and personality traits, and we're drawn to certain things, and certain things come easy to us. There's certain things that we're meant to contribute to this world. And do you know what that is for you?
I wish I did. Oh man, if I figured that out, all my problems in life would be solved. Um, I mean, look, everybody, now these days, particularly like in Western culture and in the United States, whatever, there's this concept of equality, right? This idea that everybody has to be equal. And the reality is in the material world, there's no such thing as equality.
Mhm.
Some people are taller, some people are shorter, some people are better at basketball. I'm not. Anything that has to do with hand-eye coordination goes right out the door for me. My wife, however, my wife can run circles around me on a basketball court, right? So like there is no equality in that regard. And that doesn't mean that you should allow injustice to happen or any of that kind of stuff. I just mean from a material perspective, um, there's no equality there. And so um, I I have really tried to focus in on the things so to your point, we all are born with gifts, though. We're all born with talents and gifts. Everybody's got them. There's nobody that doesn't. Some people it takes longer to find than others, right? It's kind of a beautiful thing that there isn't any equality. Everybody's different. Everybody's
Yeah.
good at something different. And
Mhm.
so that makes life interesting because if we were all good at the same stuff, life would be very, very boring.
Yeah. And there would be a lot of gaps, right? A
There'd
lot
be a
of
ton of gaps.
unfilled needs,
There would be
right?
a
Yeah.
ton of gaps. And
Yeah.
so I've tried to figure out the things that I'm okay at and try to do those more and try to figure out the things I'm less okay at, try to do them less. And so, for instance, um, in business, right? Like I'm really good with detail when everything is exploding. So I'm good at jumping on grenades and putting out fires. But if nothing is exploding or on fire, I'm actually really bad being a details person. It's really
Mhm.
tough for me. I miss things. And so when nothing is burning, I try to sit at a high level and work with people who are really good at that and recognize when they tell me I've missed something because that's what they're there for.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to my kids, you know, anybody that tells you that marriage is a 50-50 proposition the whole time has never been married and never had kids because it's 80-20, 90-10, 75 and an eighth, and whatever the other fraction is.
Yes, all the
I was a
numbers.
finance major. So, um, Uh, I used to get really upset with myself as a parent that I wasn't home all the time and that my wife was. And we're lucky my wife is a stay-at-home mom. Um, we're able to do that. And I used to get upset that like I'm a bad parent. I'm a bad parent because she's around them more than I am. You know, she spends more time with them and I'm not here enough. And um, the reality is there's a lot of things that go on day to day I'm not so great with. You know, I don't have as much patience as my wife does with our children. So I try to stick to the things that I am good at with them. I read them stories every night. That's our thing. That's what we do. That's, you know, and look, gives my wife the evening. Bobby gets to go and sit on the couch and decompress. I bathe him and put him to bed. Um, I wake him up in the morning so she can sleep in because I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning anyhow. So that works. But so in parenting, again, I stick to what I'm good at and I try to maybe stay away from the things I'm not so good at. When it comes to, you know, just everyday life, it comes to yoga, um, you know, there are certain practices that are, I'm not as good at. There are certain things that I can't do that I used to be able to do because I'm not 20 anymore. You know, and that's, I'll tell you, that's been a really hard thing. Nothing in my body hurt till I turned 40.
Yes,
And
I
then
had the same
people used to
experience.
say, "Oh, when you turn 40, things will start
Yeah.
to hurt." I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's because you didn't take care of yourself. You know,
Yeah.
it's because you drank for 20 years and
Yeah.
I have a great diet and I am physically fit and so I will not no, you want to know what? I still had knee surgery at 40, okay? It happened. I tore my meniscus. I tore it doing something really dumb. I wish I had a
Yeah.
great story. It just happened.
Yep.
And then I went to the doctor who said to me, um, I said, "Well, what do you think did it?" He said, years of wear and tear. It's like, no, that's not what I want to hear. Tell me I did something and that's the reason. You're just telling me it's age. I don't want to hear about age. Then he goes, yeah, we did your right. We took an MRI of your right one too. You're going to be seeing me again. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
geez.
come on, man. And so like that has, you
There
know,
goes
my
that
physical,
attachment piece again.
yeah. So you know what? You know what? I'm the guy in the yoga room with a blanket under my knees now for some physical postures. And I'm a yoga teacher, right? I'm not supposed to judge people. You want to know what I've done occasionally? Oh, come on, toughen up, get rid of the blanket. So there goes attachment. There goes there goes who I thought I was, right? Um,
Identity.
identity, right? Um, so even like my yoga practice, there's things that I'm not so good at anymore. I have difficulty with. And but here's the beauty of of my yoga practice. There are things that I was not into that now I'm way into, and it's like a whole new facet
Yeah.
of my own practice.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't have as much of a physical. I still practice physically a lot, but not as much. I don't have the time. I have kids. I have all.
Yeah.
But you know what? I can still read. I can still
Yeah.
study. I
Yeah.
can still meditate.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to look at that as a positive. Oh, look, I've gotten to make space for all these other things in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if that answers the question. I sort of answered your question with a question, maybe,
Sort
or a
of. I mean, I think
trapezoidal.
you kind of said you didn't know, and then you gave some of these other examples. I would be, I would challenge you to question yourself on that throughout your life and throughout your day. The way you spoke about how excited you get when your teams do well. I feel like there's something there to that with your own personal dharma, right? So because there's different layers of dharma,
Yeah.
but your like personal dharma. I feel like there's something in there for you, the way that you
Well,
spoke about that and the way your face lit up and your whole energetic of your body changed.
well,
Um,
ultimately, one of the quickest ways to experience love with another person is to be of service to them.
mhm.
And yoga, Vedic philosophy teaches that. Yoga philosophy is pretty clear about that. And so I would say that if if you want to find the highest dharma, which is to find that relationship with the divine, you get that through service. And so if you're looking to cut through all the other layers of dharma, of purpose, of duty, just serve people. I mean, I have
But
a
you're
friend of mine.
we all
So,
have our own way of serving people though, right? Because you can
true,
serve people in a
true.
million different ways.
That's
So
true.
how are you called to serve people versus how someone else is called to serve them is your own personal dharma, right?
Making breakfast for a 3-year-old at 6:30 in the morning.
Yes, 100%. We have,
I'm
I mean,
happy
the
to do it.
parenthood journey, like there's so much in parenthood, right? There's so much. There's the
Oh
reading of the
yeah.
books and dealing with the temper
Yeah.
tantrums and making the breakfast
Yeah.
and all the things that we have to do. But you'll probably even find, you're early in your parenting journey that as you move along your parenting journey, you'll realize, and here we go, we're not equal, right? We are, I guess, equal, but not 50-50. I think, is that what you
Right.
said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's never a 50, at least in my experience, it's never been a 50-50 split. But sometimes it's like 80-20 in my favor, right?
Right.
Like I'm in a rough spot and my wife is like doing 80% of the work and then it flips and
And then it
that's what a
flips,
partnership's
right?
about.
It is. And in parenting, you may find that you have certain ways that are really needed in certain circumstances,
Yeah.
right? And in other circumstances, you're like, I don't know, I don't
My
have this at all.
I mean,
And your
I'll give you a
wife may
perfect
step
example. My
in.
daughter was going through a tantrum because we left gymnastics, and my wife put her in the car. I'm standing on the side. I mean, it's a 3-year-old. There are limbs flying everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like watching somebody it's like a 3-year-old doing capoeira.
Yeah.
And we get her in the car seat. My wife gets her in the car seat, buckles her in,
Yeah.
and then she is just screaming and she's going to wake the baby that's in the car. And my wife's like, Iggy, please stop. Please be quiet. I just poked my head and I went, hey, Ig, I love you. And she goes, I love you too. I said, can I have a kiss? She gave me a kiss. I gave her a big hug and then she was good.
Yeah.
Because, interestingly enough, she doesn't get so much time with me. So she really tries to be on her best behavior when she's around me. And so, which makes my wife furious sometimes.
Yes,
But in
yes,
that
yes.
moment, she
That's a
was grateful
motherhood
that that's
thing.
the dynamic that we have because she's like, oh, you got her
Yes.
to calm down. Thank God. It's like, oh,
Yes.
usually you just get upset at me when she's really good for me and not for you. But now this works
Yes.
out. Okay,
Right.
I get it.
Yes. 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 That's so
So
true.
yeah, I've seen that. I have seen your point
Yes. And you will
in
see it
front and
more
center.
and more where whatever your, I'm calling it your dharma, but whatever your thing is that you really were meant to do here, you're not meant to do just one thing. It's not just one thing. It's the
Yeah.
way in which you do all things, right? All the things in your life. And that will infuse into parenthood and your business and how you interact with other people. But when we become aware of it, I think we can do it with much more intention.
Yeah.
And then that has more profound effects. So,
Yep.
all right, let's talk about your upcoming podcast because I'm very excited for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got so I'm starting a podcast. Still struggling with a name, but people can find me at Bob Healey Yoga. And the announcement will be up on there with links and everything else. But it's really just about talking to people who have gone through, a shift in their life, like a left turn or or a right turn or whatever, a sharp turn in their life. Because I think when those turns or shifts happen, you find a lot of personal growth and realization. And I just find it interesting. And I want to hear from people who have gone through that and what they've experienced and the realizations they've had. It's helpful for me. It's a little selfish, honestly. It's, but I've found that you really hear a lot of interesting stuff during those periods of time. I've got a friend of mine who was in real estate and threw it all away to go run a fast casual restaurant chain that's everybody. He'll be on the podcast and everybody, at least in our area, knows what it is, but it's all over the US now. And he's super successful, right? And like he was making money as a real estate person, and then he started this chain, quit everything, and just went and did one restaurant. And like what gets you what brings you to that?
Right.
What goes through your head? What gets you through all those difficult times when you're like, oh man, did I just screw up my life because I made this decision? So, I've got a friend of mine who's also a teacher of mine who was in a very famous punk rock band, way more famous than mine. Mine wasn't very famous. World renowned, and threw it all away in his early 20s and became a monk in India.
Oh my
And
gosh. Oh,
now
I
he
can't wait to hear
teaches,
that.
and now he teaches yoga.
Yeah.
And so people like that, like, and at
Yeah.
those inflection points, like
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And what were you thinking?
Yeah.
And how did you get through it?
Yeah. Which is similar to your story, right? I mean, you made a pretty big shift in your life and kind of leapt into the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still pretty unknown. I mean,
Yeah.
every day older I get, I realize how little I know.
Yes, 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 that's so true. Well, I'm excited for this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I can't wait to hear it and to hear these people's stories because I agree with you. I think there's so much learning,
Yeah.
learning there. And I think a lot of times people only see, like, let's say your friend who has this, this food chain that's successful. We look at people like that and we think like it was easy. It was easy.
Yeah.
They just knew how to
Yeah.
do it, or they
Yeah.
had family money, or I don't know what people think, but we don't see the struggle, right? We only see the outcome. So there's a lot of faith, or there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Perimenopause, man. It's not a thing. I mean, it is a thing. It's a thing that gives you brain fog.
Well, there's a lot of faith that's required. There's a lot of, it's adversity, right? And when you go through adversity, you typically learn something about yourself.
Yeah.
And the things that you learn are typically applicable to other,
right.
to other people going through difficult times and adversity. So I want to understand adversity because I think that's where you find growth.
And to see that this person did it and they were scared and maybe certain things didn't work out and they had to overcome challenges and they had self-doubt and they had all these things that everyone struggles with, and they persisted and they got to the other side and had this beautiful outcome, then other people can feel like they can do the same. So I love that part of it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for being here. I definitely kept you over your time. I didn't even look.
No, Katie, I'm sorry. No, really. I mean, you make it easy.
Thank you.
I hope I didn't run too long I don't know if you have a time limit on these podcasts.
No, I think I might actually separate this into 2 different episodes because I got so into our conversation. I usually keep track of the time better. And I just looked at the time and I was like, oh my gosh, but it was wonderful. I'm so glad to have had you on and for you to share your story. And I'm just really grateful.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Of course. I appreciate you too. And I hope to see you at BPY sometime in the future.
I'll be around.
Yeah.
I'm around. I'm not going
anywhere.
You
will. I'm sure you will. You got to get those kitties, a little bit older. You're really in the trenches of parenthood right now with, 24/7 care.
I love it.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful phase, but it's an exhausting one as well. So
yeah, I am more tired than normal.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks, Katie.
Of course. And have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will put all of your information in the show notes so people can follow you and then follow your podcast once it's out.
Awesome.
All right.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, friends, I know we covered a lot of big topics in this episode. I wanted to give you a little homework for this week, and I decided to pull out one of the quotes that Bob mentioned in the episode. It was by Einstein, and the exact quote is, "The most important decision you'll make is whether you believe you live in a friendly or a hostile universe." So my invitation to you this week is to start observing yourself, start observing your thoughts and your feelings and your reactions to people and experiences in your life, and decide whether you are living your life from the basic belief that the world is friendly or that the world is hostile. Because that basic belief does define how we experience the world. 2 people having the same exact experience, but one having a basic belief that the world is friendly and the other one that it's hostile, will interpret that experience very differently, and it will change how they respond and the amount of meaning they can get from the experience, and basically the amount of joy and happiness and connection that they can experience in their lives. So take some time to observe yourself. Decide if you're in the friendly camp or the hostile camp, and then decide if where you are is where you want to remain. All right, have a wonderful week, friends. I can't wait to talk to you next time.